Well, here we are, Patrick. End of a long season. Thank you to everyone for watching, listening. Do the plug right off the top. Sign up for the Canuck Report at theprovince.com, vancouversun.com. You'll get all our Canucks content through the off-season delivered to you. We're going to be doing a series of these videos in the next few weeks, covering, perhaps focusing on some subjects, but this is going to be sort of a general one. We wanted to
Yeah.
wait for the smoke to clear at the end of the season. Let me just let me just start by asking you, was there a legit scenario at the start of the season going after their success in the playoffs last year? Was there a legit scenario in your head where you thought they'd end up where they are here today?
Legitimately, no. I mean, as I always say, especially in hockey, you never say never. So the idea that they would not make the playoffs wasn't impossible. But we really did think this team was a playoff team. We didn't think they were the sort of repeat division winner type team. We knew they had some flaws. They'd obviously made some changes on the blue line. But it, even if Elias Pettersson had had a poor season, which he ended up having, you figured JT Miller was going to be JT Miller and keep scoring and be that guy who can do enough. We saw it in the playoffs last year, right? Like, Pettersson was nowhere to be seen, but Miller was great. Brock Boeser was great. Goaltending ended up being, at least a good story in the playoffs last year. There was, this seemed like it's a team that had sort of solidified what its base should be, and yet their base collapsed. And it was a lot of it's because their stars were terrible. Their defense didn't work for half the season. They couldn't really take over games. They couldn't score for the longest time, and we forget how bad their offense was in January, and that was partly because of their stars, but overall they weren't generating anything. The team that finished the season was playing a lot better hockey than the team that played hockey through most of the season, but it was too little too late, so it didn't really matter. But no, I mean, to answer your question, no. Like, I don't really think... I mean, you wouldn't have been crazy to say they're never making the playoffs, because they never make the playoffs, right? But fundamentally, I would have said no. That's being too down on this group, too down on what they'd accomplished the year before.
Yeah, I think we all looked at them and thought they were a team in ascension, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Pettersson entering his prime, if not squarely
Right.
in it. Same thing with Hughes. And when you look at that, I mean, Hughes dealt with injury, but still had a superb season. Pettersson, a shadow of last season.
Yeah.
Miller, even like conflict, controversy, trade aside, shadow of last season. Boeser, not quite a shadow of last season, but not as good as last season.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think you're so right about goaltending. Obviously, there's health with Thatcher Demko, but Shelov's terrible compared to last year. And Lankinen, great story first half of the season, and after he signed his extension,
Kind of fell back to earth. Yeah.
yeah. So negatives pretty much all round at the top. Now, I suppose if there were positives coming out of this season, you would say defense certainly looks more shored up.
Yeah.
And yes, there are going to be issues around contracts, but Pia Suter and Jake DeBrusk, not terrible. I mean, DeBrusk's so up and down, so streaky, but still, I think his numbers for your biggest free agent signing, probably not bad. So it's not all negative, but
Yeah.
your view on some of those things that went well.
Yeah. They brought some young. Well, I guess some young. I mean, Jonathan Karamaki played games. He's having a tough finish to the year. He's been a bit invisible in Abbotsford.
Happens to young players, right?
Yeah. Listen, but we saw him score a couple good goals. Like, he has the hands. He's got to put on some strength and some weight. But yeah, Elias Pettersson to go with your shoring up the defense. Like, their defense is in a better spot. Why they didn't get that sorted out last summer instead of waiting till basically everything had fallen apart to fix that is a great question. It's a question that was left on the cutting room floor on Monday, unfortunately. But yeah, like that's a positive. Thatcher Demko, I mean, I'm really ambivalent about that. Like, I know you want to ask me about positive things. Kevin Lankinen was a nice story, but they probably overpaid for him, given his role, given his pedigree, given what other goalies, Charlie Lindgren signing in for less in Washington and probably still putting up better numbers than Lankinen. Yeah, like there are things to sort of look at and say, yeah, there is a way forward here, but fundamentally this is a team that still is very much incomplete, as Jim Rutherford acknowledged on Monday. Like, they need another couple forwards. And if they're going to do that, they're going to have to make some changes on the back end because they can't sustain where they're at. They're going to have to trade somebody. And a positive note that should have been the signing of Tom Willander, but Willander is still unsigned, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's a couple $100,000. Like, it's peanuts in the big picture.
Does it not make sense?
Nothing
considering this organization
ever makes sense. But yes,
no, that makes total sense.
No, that's what I mean.
They have a reputation for penny pinching.
Yeah, nothing makes
being
sense.
Stubborn when you're really close to getting the right thing done.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah.
I broke into a big smirk there because going back to a previous lifetime in this business, when print was the big thing, every season we would do sort of a movie poster parody. And when you said, that why wasn't that done last summer? I do recall, I know what you did last summer, parody, and I know what you did last season when they had another disappointing finish. So that's why I broke into that. I just, these are they're not fancy stats at all. They're as basic as it gets. But, final totals, 19 fewer points than last year, which is significant. But they scored 42 fewer goals and let in 30 more. And when you look at that, that my math's not great, but that tells me that 72 goals, the difference,
that's a real swing.
Nearly one per game, which is pretty massive, to be honest with you.
Right.
Which one is more fixable for them next year, scoring more goals or not surrendering as many?
Well, just on that point, we talked about the defense being better, and yet they gave up more goals. And some of that was a lack of ability to sustain pressure in the offensive zone. Some of that was just, as we've already noted, like the mostly poor overall performance of their goalies, especially late in the year. And that's tied in, I suppose, a little bit to the system. I was talking to someone about this the other day, like thinking about what are goalies actually? And obviously, there's a couple really great goalies in the league. And then there's a whole bunch of guys that are just very good starters. And then there's probably a handful of starts. I don't think you end up with goalies in jobs who aren't good enough. But you get starts like Artur Shilov's. Artur Shilov's had a terrible season. And one or two bad starts made a difference. But he ended up playing like 10 games. Like that makes... He had 2 wins this year, and they were both the Chicago Blackhawks. And so that can betray whatever system's in front of you, just as much as the system can betray the goalie. So I think in a way there is some fixing there to be done that should be pretty easy. And then the theory from the Canucks is the better we defend, the better things will go on attack because we'll have the puck back. As I said, I think about how well the Vancouver Whitecaps defended on Thursday night. But there's a lesson in any of these things. In any sport, you're only going to be so good as you are at keeping the object out of your goal. And notionally, the Canucks should have had a better defensive season than their results ended up playing out. In many ways, I'm less worried about the defense as I am about the offense. Offense, to quote Travis Green, it's a hard league to score goals in, and which means you need talent. And I am been long a Brock Boeser supporter, a guy who knows how to finish. He's not a spectacularly exciting goal scorer, but scores at a 30-goal pace every year, 25 goals again this year, 40 goals last year. Like, that's not something to sniff at. Jake DeBrusk, similar kind of player, great complementary scorer. Elias Pettersson is supposed to be your top forward. Well, he was terrible this year. You need him to come back, but you're still going to have to find someone, but you've got to find another centerman. And so where they do that and how they do that is going to be the real challenge. And yet, if they do that, I think they're a long ways closer to where they thought they were versus where they turned out.
It's a riddle in the middle, Patrick. We should talk about this though. I find the NHL a bizarre league. Like, we are still so dismissive of goaltending. And it's like, you need some guys in there, and we have to stop the puck, and the more we have the puck, no, that's true. But, we're sitting here lamenting the Canucks not being in the playoffs. Look at the Oilers. They're in the playoffs, and yet again, for how many years in a row? This is the Maple Leafs for the last 30 years, is you go out and get the guys. It's a hard league to score in, and everyone focuses on getting those guys, and no one wants to make the commitment to defense and goaltending. And I would say, that's where I find the Canucks fascinating, because if you were to take stock at the end of last season and sort of see where the franchise was, you would like hope to at least get as far as you did, but you would think like our window is now, and clearly that's crashed now. So Demko should be a piece that when he's healthy and maybe changes scenery, he should be an asset. But he's not going to be because the NHL doesn't believe that goaltenders are assets.
Well, they do and they don't. Like, I get what you're saying. I mean,
what would your market be for Demko? Like, if you're looking to fix problems here, and everyone does talk about they're going to need a center, you should be able to say, look, we committed to Lankinen, rightly or wrongly. We hope that he's more consistent next year. But Thatcher Demko for help at center. We know that's not commensurate. I mean, this goes back to Roberto Luongo. My contract sucks. Like, you cannot move elite goalies.
Yeah, and you don't need to look at just like a hypothetical. Like, you can look at what goalies actually get moved for. Like Mackenzie Blackwood, and it gets moved for like almost nothing. Like the trades that happened this year involving goalies. Like, let's look it up. Like, it's wild to consider how much or how little goalies go for. Right? Like, he was traded for, as Alexander Georgiev, who's been a decent goalie, right? But he was traded for another goalie. Like, that's what the trade was. They're just like the Linus Ullmark trade last summer from Boston to Ottawa. Like, again, guys that are just kind of, oh well, we think he's good.
It's like a team that has two quarterbacks. You can't play them at the same time. So if they're two assets, you move one for something to play somewhere else. And you can't, if you have two great goalies, you can't play them both at the same time.
Yeah,
I know you need depth and I know you need quality backup, but when you get to the playoffs, you're not playing your backup. And if you are, you're in trouble. Yeah. So I just don't, my whole point is I just don't, when I look at changes on this team, I just don't understand how, when I look at the Oilers yet again, falling on their face in the playoffs after becoming, being a goal away last year.
Yeah, and like that's kind of part of it. I would say is actually a great case of your argument, which is that maybe you should take a little more seriously. I mean, you not have to like invest everything in your goalie, but you need a good one. And if they'd had a goalie that was better than Stuart Skinner, maybe they win the Stanley Cup. Like the Edmonton Oilers are the example I always look to as a team that has not taken goaltending development seriously at all. There are times when maybe you can say some teams are taking it too seriously, I suppose. But when it comes to the Oilers, like they had, since they walked away from Devin Dubnyk 12, 13 years ago, for no real reason other than he had a bad run of starts, they've put two goalies in the NHL. Like, they've drafted goalies and put them in the NHL twice. And Stuart Skinner is one of them. And Laurent Brossoit, who's, a career backup, is the other. And like, that's just not very good. Yeah. At the same time, you've got the Canucks who've churned out, Corey Schneider and Eddie Lack. Jacob Markstrom, really, I think they get credit for Jacob Markstrom just because he did find his way here. Thatcher Demko.
But again, Markstrom was a goalie asset. I mean, I know there are other pieces, but this is it. You're right. Like, moving on goalies, I just look at Demko should be a piece they could use to fix their center problem, and it's not going to be.
Well, because I just to go back to the Ullmark trade, I forgot it was for Jonas Korpisalo, so another goalie and their first rounder. So they did pay a premium to get the goalie, but I don't think right now with Thatcher Demko, with the concerns about his health and the sort of up and down performance this year, I just don't think you're turning around and getting much in a trade. And I think you're right to point out that seems silly given how how variable goalies can be. Like, when the best goalies have down moments, and for whatever reason, teams at times are just like, well, this guy sucks, let's get rid of him.
Yeah. I'm just looking at fixes, right? Yeah. So if I look at where the Canucks are and what they need this offseason, what assets do you have to get better? Well, you have a draft pick. You have Lekiermaki, you have Wilander.
Yep.
I'm guessing that you're going to say they need more than that. So what is it? Is it free agency? Is it a trade? They're going to have money if they make that Boeser Suter decisions.
They definitely had. I mean, I know that around the trade deadline they were because we all know that they were kicking tires on Josh Norris, and I'm pretty sure at one point they were talking about trying to maybe flip Phil Hedl the other way. And then Hedl's been a good player, but like, he's not. Even when he was healthy, he's not a guy that teams are banging down the door for. And now he's coming off another concussion, so like, they don't have a lot of things to move. Elias Pettersson, I suppose, it depends. When I was talking to someone about this the other day, like, I suppose he may become a trade chip.
But
right?
you've
Like,
just spent all the last 2 years saying you need
he's
to
cheap.
fix your defense. This
And
is a
he's
house
cheap.
of cards.
Yeah, I know. Well, it is a house of cards. That fundamentally is the truth. You're coming back to a house of cards, which is and this is now the house of cards that is Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin's making, right?
Yeah.
This is no longer them dealing with the mess left behind by Jim Benning. Like
I still see a joker there on the bottom left corner that, thank you, Jim, for that. But yes.
Exactly.
It's
right?
still part of it. It's part and parcel of it. You're right.
In the end, this is a team that this is their team. They have obviously Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson and Brock Boeser and Thatcher Demko and Connor Garland, and those guys are from here before. But the rest of the team, Tyler Myers, I guess, but the rest of the team is this management group's, right? Like they've moved forward.
They've done a good job for the most part.
Well,
they had their best playoff run. I would suggest that their defense is much better.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, you're right. They need another. Well, again, we use the reference of a house of cards or whack-a-mole, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You absolutely need Elias Pettersson to get back close to where he was. You need another center. And then you're looking at, well, do we achieve that by losing a Brock Boeser, P.S. Suter? Like the positives from this year, now you're losing to get another positive, so now you've got holes over here. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I know we've got all offseason to talk about this. Let's just quickly, and by the time people watch this, who knows, something may have happened. But the first domino has to be the coach.
Yeah.
What's your sense of what's going on there? I see Dollywall is spouting today that it's going to cost top dollar, and he's not sure the Canucks want to go there.
Yeah, I mean that's obvious. It would have been done by now. Yeah, I think if you look at here's an easy one. Craig Berube makes $4.5 million. You know who his agent is? Steve Mountain, same as Rick Tocchet. So that's an easy comp.
Yeah. And
if the Canucks don't want to go there, I mean, if you're Rick Tocchet, you're looking out there. There's options. People love talking about the Flyers. People love talking Rangers. There are other interesting teams out there. Mm-hmm. Saw someone mention the Ducks today, which you're like, that might be an interesting challenge. And certainly it's sunny. It's Orange County. It's a beautiful place to be.
He spent some time playing in LA, right?
He knows, he knows it. He's not that far from Vegas.
Phoenix,
where he lives. There are intriguing options.
Get back into Janet's football pool.
Yeah. No comment. but he's in the driver's seat here. He can basically say, "Listen, I think I'm worth this, and you guys can figure it out how to pay me."
And he's a coach of the year.
He's a coach of the year. He battled through. The president buttered him up. I think he did as good a job this year as he did last year because the challenges were so much harder. It's a spot that is surprising. So yeah, I mean that's
your
obviously
gut feeling. Does it get done?
My gut feeling. I've been saying 60-40 no. I just lean more towards no because of the uncertainty around this roster, the opportunities that await elsewhere, and just knowing how reticent ownership here is to, in general, pay their coaches.
We have a lot of time this offseason to talk about all these topics more in general. We'll probably focus them, but is this another example of perhaps ownership being an impediment to success?
Well,
or is that too harsh?
I mean,
I'm not trying to get you in trouble. I'm legit saying the amount. I know the NHL is terrible in general. I saw a stat this week. The average lifespan of an NHL coach is 2.2 years, which is insane. It's by far the shortest of any of the major professional sports.
And I mean, here, go with if say they let Tocchet go and they'll be hiring a new coach this summer, right? That will be 4 coaches in 4 years.
Yeah,
because you've got Travis Green gets fired at the end of 2021. Bruce Boudreau comes in. He gets fired early in 2023. Rick Tocchet comes in. So he's been the coach for the last 2 years, right? And then you're having a new coach. That's constant turnover. And I don't know if that's necessarily on ownership directly, but I've written this before that in many ways the environment that they now sit in is 100% the product of ownership, right? In soccer, in Europe, you end up with the rich owner who doesn't get the results right away, so he fires the manager and hires a new one, and the manager brings in his own guys and still has the other guys on the books, right? You end up you can look at Manchester United and all just the bloated wage bill they have there, right? That doesn't happen here in the same way, but when you're not spending or you're you're pushing for particular types of players, like you end up in the position you're in because you made brutal decisions. In a cap world, you can afford very few mistakes, and that's where it comes back to, is if you're not having a fully sort of rational plan, which for the most part, I think we would agree that this current management group has until this year had that. And having
Every
JT
4
Miller
years, Patrick.
but every 4 years, but having JT Miller blow up on you the way it did, that situation, I don't think anybody would anticipate it. They knew there were challenges in the relationship, right? Like everyone knew that, but I don't think anybody expected it to end like this.
And I don't think it's anything that a coach could have solved either.
I don't think coach would solve it. So anyway, but the point is that there's all these underlying things. The practice facility is still sitting out there, should be the biggest flag out there for anyone trying to figure this out. Like Jim Rutherford himself said it. We've met with 3 or 4 different groups, right? Like, you can't make a deal. You are in theory a very big player in this town, and you can't make a deal. Why is that? And people can figure that out, I think, for themselves. But fundamentally, it comes back to how the business gets run. And to quote Luigi Aquilini from way back when, there is no money in the buy. There is no money in the sell. There's only money in the buy. And that's where you look for value and you sit on it. You do not spend as much as you can. And then we've seen the renovations, how long things take in the arena, because there's a reluctance to reinvest. And if that's what it takes on things they already own, the idea that they're going to put it on something new, like, it should be no surprise that they are holding a firm line on negotiating with Tocchet and negotiating with Tom Willander, as little sense as it makes. Because as I've written today, if the whole task is to keep Quinn Hughes happy, shouldn't you be doing everything you can to keep the coach that he really likes and connected really well with? That's where we're at.
That's where we're at. We're going to leave it there for now because we have to save stuff for May and June and July and August and September. It's a long, long way back to success and excitement. But, we do have the draft. We have free agency, lots of stuff coming up, and lots of roster examination. So, Patrick, thank you for your time. Everyone, thanks for watching and listening. Again, theprovince.com, vancouversun.com. Patrick is active on Blue Sky. You can get his Canucks stuff there if you're a social person. And we will talk to you next week.